September 15th arrived and Tate still hadn't come home from Milan. Chloe and Tate's honeymoon had ended with both members on opposite sides of the world. Chloe tried not to let it show, but she felt like she was losing Tate and he wasn't prioritizing her. The house felt unusually quiet. No calls. No messages. No sign of him. That afternoon, Chloe invited again several of her friends over to Talia's house while everyone else was out. Noah hadn't intended to eavesdrop. He kept telling himself to mind his own business. But every mention of Tate caught his attention. Even though he had tried to bury his memories of Tate, locking them away because they hurt too much, that didn't mean he had stopped caring. It was impossible not to. For 22 years, Tate had been woven into nearly every chapter of Noah's life. You couldn't erase someone like that simply by deciding to. Noah still worried. He still wondered where Tate was. Whether he was eating. Whether he was sleeping. Whether he was safe. He leaned against the hallway wall, close enough to hear the occasional fragment of conversation drifting from the living room but not close enough to be seen. He felt guilty for listening. Yet another part of him told him that if anyone knew where Tate was or what had happened to him, it might be one of the people talking inside. So Noah remained where he was. Quiet. Listening. Not because he wanted gossip, but because, despite everything that had happened between them, he still cared about the handsome young man who had once been the center of his world. So, Brooke said, taking a sip of her mojito, "Where is that wonderful, dashing prince of yours?" Chloe didn't answer immediately. She stared down into her drink, trying not to cry. "He's still in Milan." The room grew quieter. "He finished everything in the other country and went back to where we were supposed to spend our honeymoon." She swallowed hard. "Tate still hasn't come back." Mia clutched the pearls around her neck dramatically. "Oh, give me a break." Serena rolled her eyes. "Like that's any surprise." She shook her head. "He is a selfish asshole. I bet he's already worked his way through every woman on the Riviera." Brooke let out a dry laugh. "That reminds me of my ex. You know Jalen." Several of the women nodded. "I found out he'd hooked up with practically everyone at the hotel while we were celebrating our 1-year anniversary while dating." She groaned at the memory. "I caught him with 3 members of the hotel staff in our bedroom." A chorus of horrified reactions filled the room. "Awful," Brooke said, shaking her head. "You can't even take a man to a luxury hotel before he starts treating the place like room service." Despite the humor in her delivery, the bitterness behind the joke was obvious. The conversation drifted into shared stories of broken trust, disappointing relationships, and partners who had chosen selfishness over commitment, while Chloe sat quietly, hopping against hope that her own story wouldn't end the same way. Brooke looked uncomfortable. "Is Tate Blue cheating on you?" Brooke's question wasn't judgmental. If anything, she sounded worried. Like a friend who was afraid someone she cared about was being betrayed. Chloe slowly shook her head. "No." She took a quiet breath. "We're not exclusive." She smiled awkwardly. "Monogamous, I guess, is the traditional term. We talked about it before we got married." Brooke tilted her head. "You did?" Chloe nodded. "It was actually my idea." The room fell silent. From the kitchen doorway, Noah found himself leaning in ever so slightly, listening. "I didn't want to be monogamous," Chloe admitted. "I'm only 22. She shrugged. "I'm young. I didn't want to feel like I was missing out on life just because I got married." She hesitated. "Or because I'm a trophy wife." She immediately grimaced. "No, I didn't mean that." She rubbed her forehead. "That's the wrong phrase." After thinking for a moment, she corrected herself. "Socialite wife is probably a better way to put it." She smiled faintly. "Tate doesn't take me for granted. He's never treated me like I don't matter." She looked down at her hands. "He's just an incredibly busy man. He has a lot of pressure on him, and we both understood before we got married that our relationship wasn't going to look like everyone else's." Noah stayed where he was, quietly listening. He wasn't trying to pry into Chloe's private life. But every piece of information about Tate seemed to answer one question while raising 2 more. Serena smiled. As long as he treats you like the queen you are and doesn't leave you alone for too long, I don't care if you two have the most unconventional marriage in the world. Her expression hardened. But if that man hurts you in any way, I'll rip his balls off. The room erupted in laughter. But, Serena added with a grin, if he treats you like a queen, that's all I need to know. Brooke nodded. So do I. Mia raised an eyebrow. So Tate can be with anyone he wants. Chloe nodded. He can. She held up a finger. There are rules though. What kind of rules? Brooke asked. He can't be involved with anyone in our social circle, Chloe explained. We agreed on that before we got married. Why? Mia asked. So nothing becomes awkward, Chloe said. No rumors spreading around town, no drama between friends, and nobody else's relationships getting caught in the middle. Brooke nodded thoughtfully. That actually sounds like you two talked it through. We did, Chloe replied. There was a brief silence before Brooke smiled mischievously. Can I ask you something personal? Chloe laughed nervously. That depends. Are you happy? Chloe blinked. Brooke shrugged. I don't mean whether he's handsome or rich, I mean, does your marriage make you happy? Do you feel cared for? Chloe looked down at the ice melting in her glass. After a long pause, she smiled. When he's with me, yes. Her smile faded slightly. It's when he's gone that it's hard. The room grew quieter. Mia reached across the coffee table and squeezed Chloe's hand. I think that's the answer we were really looking for. From the kitchen doorway, Noah quietly stepped back. He had heard enough. For the first time since Tate had disappeared, he wasn't wondering about money, business, or rumors. He was wondering whether Tate realized just how many people were waiting for him to come home. Serena smiled mischievously. So, she leaned forward. Does Tate sexually satisfy you? Chloe nearly choked on her Long Island iced tea. Oh, don't be modest, Serena laughed. I'm asking because you're my friend. Brooke grinned. She means, are you happy with the physical part of your marriage? A deep blush spread across Chloe's face. I don't know. The women exchanged puzzled looks. What do you mean you don't know? Mia asked gently. Chloe looked down at her glass. I've never been with anyone else. She shrugged awkwardly. Tate was my first serious relationship, and after we got back together we got married. She smiled sheepishly. So I don't really have anything to compare it to. Brooke nodded thoughtfully. That's fair. You only know what you've experienced. Chloe laughed nervously. So if it's amazing, I wouldn't know, and if it's average, I probably wouldn't know that either. The women laughed with her. Brooke smiled. I wasn't suggesting you compare people against each other. She reached over and squeezed Chloe's hand. I just want to know that you're happy and that he respects you. Chloe's smile softened. He does. There wasn't even a moment's hesitation. He treats me with kindness, and he's always considerate of how I feel. Serena nodded approvingly. That's what matters most. From the kitchen doorway, Noah quietly stepped back. He hadn't intended to overhear such a personal conversation. Hearing Chloe talk so openly about her marriage made him uncomfortable, and he decided he'd heard enough. He slipped quietly down the hallway, giving the women the privacy they deserved. I'm not a prude, Chloe said with an embarrassed laugh. I've heard every rumor there is about Tate. Brooke raised an eyebrow. Oh. Chloe nodded. People say he's a stud. She rolled her eyes. And I've heard women gossip that he's, well. She covered her face for a second. That he's built like a horse. The room burst into laughter. I don't know how half these rumors even start, Chloe said, smiling despite herself. People love exaggerating. She took another sip of her drink. But I will admit something. What? Serena asked. I'd like more life experience. Brooke tilted her head. You mean generally? Chloe nodded. I got married young. Sometimes I wonder what I don't know simply because I haven't experienced much of adulthood yet. Serena smirked. Fair enough. Then lowering her voice with a teasing grin, she asked, has he ever made you orgasm? In the kitchen, Noah's eyes widened. Chloe nodded. When we were together the first time in his car at the meat processing plant, he made me orgasm twice. Well, Selena said, he does live up to the rumors. Chloe blushed. He's the most attractive sexy man I've ever seen, Brooke sighed loudly. So are the rumors about his dick size accurate? I've heard he's 9 inches, Brooke nudged Chloe. Chloe stared into her iced tea. Yeah, he's 9.5 inches before he's aroused, 10 after he gets hard during sex. Wow, Brooke laughed, pouring herself another glass of red wine. Mia leaned against the marble counter, her eyes sparkling with mischief as she turned to Chloe. Does he have an 8-pack? Chloe nodded eagerly, her cheeks flushed pink. He's quite athletic. He does 1,000 push-ups every morning. He hangs upside down at his door frame doing 1,500 pull-ups, and before bed he bench presses 5,000. He's built like an animal. His muscles are so defined. He's very strong. It helps during sex. She giggled, covering her mouth with her hand. I bet it does, Serena laughed, throwing her head back as the sound echoed through the kitchen. Noah felt sick in the kitchen, his stomach twisting as he stood frozen behind the refrigerator door, listening to every word. You never told me, Brooke said, smiling. I understand why you're attracted to him. He's incredibly handsome and everyone knows he turns heads. The women laughed. But after a while, looks aren't enough. Brooke leaned forward. What else is there? What makes you stay? She smiled warmly. The physical attraction only gets you so far. Is he funny? Does he have a good sense of humor? Does he like to travel? Can you have philosophical conversations together? What do you two actually have in common? Chloe smiled to herself before answering. He's surprisingly gentle. The room grew quiet. I know that's not the reputation people expect. She laughed softly. Most people see this confident businessman who walks into a room and owns it, but when we're alone. She paused. He's thoughtful, remembers little things, and if I casually mention a book I want to read, it'll somehow end up on my bedside table a week later. If I say I miss a certain restaurant, he'll rearrange his schedule just to take me. Brooke smiled. That's sweet. Chloe nodded. He loves traveling. He'll disappear for work, but when we're together, he'll spend hours showing me little cafes, museums, or beautiful places I'd never have found on my own. And he's much funnier than people realize. Really? Serena asked. Oh, absolutely. He has the driest sense of humor. He'll keep a completely straight face while saying something ridiculous, and then he'll wait 5 minutes before smiling because he's waiting to see if you caught the joke. The women laughed. In conversation, Mia asked. Chloe smiled. We can talk for hours, business, history, art, and music, where we want to travel. Sometimes we'll sit together with a cup of coffee and barely notice that half the day has disappeared. She looked down at her glass. I think that's what I love most, not the glamorous parts. It's that when he's truly present, he makes me feel like I'm the only person in the room. In the kitchen, Noah stood quietly. For the first time since he'd begun overhearing the conversation, he wasn't listening to gossip. He was listening to someone describe the version of Tate that only people close to him ever seemed to know. Chloe twisted a strand of hair around her finger, her voice dropping to a whisper. Tate is very hypersexual. I mean, he wants it all the time. I think we did it 10 times on our wedding night. Her face flushed crimson as she continued. He's insatiable and it felt good, so I let him. It's just he's kind of intense. Mia and Serena burst into giggles, their laughter filling the kitchen. Is he real good in bed? Mia asked between chuckles. Chloe nodded, biting her lower lip. Yes. Noah's heart dropped as he stood motionless behind the refrigerator door, his knuckles white against the handle. Noah didn't want to know. He didn't want to hear about Tate's life with other people. Not because he believed Tate belonged to him. He didn't. That was the hardest part to accept. For 22 years, Tate had been beside him in ways Noah had never experienced with anyone else. They had grown up together, shared a home, shared memories, shared a bed, and experienced a kind of closeness that Noah had never been able to explain to anyone. For years, Noah had slept beside Tate. He had gotten used to the warmth of him being there. The sound of him breathing. The way Tate would reach for him without thinking. Sometimes, in the quiet moments before sleep, Noah had imagined things he never allowed himself to say out loud. The possibility that one day Tate would notice him or roll over in bed, pin Noah down and fuck him senseless was Noah's dream. That one day Tate would understand what Noah had felt for so long. But 8 years earlier, Noah had finally stopped waiting. He had realized that Tate wasn't going to change. Not because Tate was cruel. Not because Tate was trying to hurt him. Maybe Tate simply didn't see what Noah saw. Maybe Tate had never been capable of seeing it. And Noah had convinced himself that he had to accept that. It wasn't Tate's fault. It was just the reality of who they were. Noah had spent years telling himself that he was the one who misunderstood. That he had read too much into moments that meant something different to Tate. That he had mistaken closeness for something else. So he buried it. He moved on as best as he could. But standing there now, listening to people talk about Tate as if they knew him completely, Noah felt something ache inside him. Not jealousy exactly. Something deeper. A grief for something he had never actually had. Because the hardest part wasn't losing Tate. Noah wasn't sure he had ever truly had him. The hardest part was wondering whether Tate had ever realized there was something to lose at all. The sound of a text notification coming from Chloe's phone made everyone stop talking. The conversation immediately faded. Chloe looked down at the screen. For a moment her expression changed. Then she locked the phone and placed it face down. "Does anyone want cupcakes?" The sudden change in subject made Brooke raise an eyebrow. "Talia made a few, they're in the kitchen if you want some." The women exchanged looks. Everyone noticed. "Who was that from?" Brooke asked with a knowing smile. Chloe hesitated. Then she answered. "Tate." The room shifted. Serena leaned forward immediately. "Okay, Dish." Chloe sighed. "He's coming home." A few smiles appeared around the room. Finally Mia said. Chloe nodded. "At least for one night." "One night?" Brooke asked. "He has a meeting in New York tomorrow evening." She looked down at her phone. "So he'll only be staying overnight." From the kitchen doorway Noah froze. His stomach dropped. After all the anger. After the silence. After wondering where Tate had gone and whether he was ever coming back. Tate was returning. But only for a night. Noah stood quietly, listening as the room filled with excitement about Tate coming home. Everyone else seemed relieved. Happy. Almost celebratory. But Noah felt something much more complicated. Because Tate coming back meant he would have to see him again. And Noah wasn't sure if that was what he wanted anymore. Why is he coming all the way to the Pacific coast just for one night? Serena looked genuinely confused. Chloe smiled softly. "He said he wanted to see me." There was something almost shy about the way she said it. Brooke raised her eyebrows. "Wait. Your husband is flying all the way across the country just to spend 10 hours with you?" Chloe nodded. "He has a meeting in New York tomorrow evening, but he said he didn't want to wait any longer." Serena shook her head, smiling. "Okay, I have to admit." She laughed. "That is actually pretty sweet." Chloe looked down at her phone. "He said he's bringing me flowers." "Flowers?" Mia asked. Chloe nodded. "He wants to apologize for any inconvenience, the public embarrassment, or anything he did that made me feel ignored." Brooke smiled. "That actually sounds thoughtful." Chloe nodded. "Tate can be difficult sometimes." She paused. "But he does try." Serena leaned back in her chair. "I need to replace my boyfriend." Everyone laughed. "I'm serious," she said, pointing toward Chloe. "My boyfriend wouldn't fly across the country just to see me for one night." Chloe smiled. "I know it seems dramatic." "No," Serena replied, "it's not dramatic." She shook her head. "It's someone making an effort." From the kitchen Noah listened quietly. He had spent so long focusing on the things Tate couldn't say. The things Tate avoided. The things Tate refused to acknowledge. But hearing Chloe talk about Tate flying thousands of miles just to apologize and see her made something inside Noah tighten. Because this was the part of Tate that had always confused him. The part that could be incredibly distant one moment. And then go to extraordinary lengths for someone he cared about the next. Chloe's face turned bright red. Brooke immediately noticed. "Wait." She leaned closer. "He's coming all the way back here for more than just an apology, isn't he?" "No," Chloe said quickly. But the way she looked away answered before her words did. Mia laughed. Come on. Tell us. Chloe covered part of her face with her hand, embarrassed. He said he was bringing me a surprise. Serena smiled. Then why are you blushing? Chloe looked down into her drink. Because of the way he said it. The women waited. Chloe sighed. Tate has a way of making everything sound dramatic. Brooke laughed. That sounds like him. Chloe's cheeks stayed flushed as she leaned closer to the marble counter, her voice softening but growing more detailed. He told me that no matter what happened while he was away, the girls he was with, the orgies he attended, he said I was his favorite fuck, and that he wanted to show me how much he cared by going down on me. Mia raised an eyebrow. What exactly did he say to you, Chloe, word for word? Chloe took a breath, eyes flicking between her friends. Chloe describes what Tate wants to do to her in bed. Scene retracted, read extended version on Wattpad. Serena's eyes widened. He really said all that. Brooke leaned in, voice low, keep going, what else? Scene retracted, read extended version on Wattpad. Mia bit her lip, God, Chloe. Serena fanned herself, and you'll let him. Chloe nodded, voice barely above a whisper. I will, he kept saying, this is mine, this is what I am coming back for. Brooke's eyes sparkled, he really is obsessed with you. Chloe smiled faintly, still flushed. Noah's stomach twisted behind the refrigerator door, every explicit detail sinking in as the women kept talking. The teasing expressions of Chloe's girlfriends softened. Mia smiled. Okay, that is actually really sweet. Chloe nodded. He's not always easy to understand. She looked at her phone. But when he chooses someone, he chooses them completely. From the kitchen, Noah stayed silent. He had expected to hear about Tate being careless. Instead, he kept hearing about the contradictions. The man who disappeared. The man who returned. The man who struggled to say what he felt but somehow found ways to show it. And somehow that hurt almost more. Brooke leaned in closer on Talia's couch, eyes locked on Chloe. So what kind of sex do you have with Tate? Chloe describes her sex life with Tate. Scene retracted, read extended version on Wattpad. Serena and Mia listened without interrupting. Chloe kept going. Noah never got a single night. Now he watched Chloe describe the daily routine he had dreamed about, every detail confirming how completely Tate had chosen someone else. Don't misunderstand, Chloe said, noticing the looks on her friends' faces. She shook her head. People hear one thing about Tate and they immediately make assumptions. The women became quieter. Yes, we have a very sexual, intimate relationship, Chloe admitted, but that's not the only thing. She looked down at her drink. He's kind to me. He takes me out to dinner, he remembers things I mention, he surprises me with gifts, he brings me flowers for no reason. Brooke smiled. That's a very different picture than the one people gossip about. Chloe nodded. Because people only see the surface. She paused. Tate can be intense, he can be stubborn, he can be impossible sometimes. The women laughed softly. But he also shows up. Her expression became more serious. If he says he'll be somewhere, he is there. He makes me feel valued. Serena nodded. That's important. Chloe smiled faintly. I never feel like I'm just something convenient in his life. He makes an effort to make sure I feel cared for. From the kitchen, Noah listened quietly. The conversation was becoming harder to hear. Not because Chloe was saying anything cruel. Actually, it was the opposite. She was describing a side of Tate that Noah knew existed but rarely saw explained by someone else. The thoughtful side. The side that remembered details. The side that showed affection through actions instead of words. And that was what made everything so complicated. Tate could be distant. Tate could be confusing. But he could also make someone feel incredibly important. Noah looked down at the counter. After 22 years of knowing Tate, he was still learning how many different versions of him existed. Do you love him? Brooke asked the question gently. Not as gossip. Not as curiosity. As a friend who genuinely wanted to know. She reached over and took Chloe's hand. Chloe looked embarrassed at first. Then she laughed softly. Yeah. She smiled. Yeah, I do. From the kitchen, Noah went completely still. The words landed harder than he expected. He had spent years trying to convince himself that Tate's relationships meant nothing to him. That Tate was just living his life. That Noah had accepted the boundaries between them. But hearing Tate's wife say those words made something inside him crack. Because Chloe wasn't talking about a crush. She wasn't talking about excitement or infatuation. She was talking about love. And Noah knew the answer to the next question before Brooke even asked. Does he love you? Brooke's voice was quieter. Like truly love you. Chloe looked down. For a moment she didn't answer. He's never. She stopped. The room waited. He's never said the L word. Noah's heart sank. But Chloe continued. Not because he doesn't care. He just doesn't express things the way other people do. She smiled sadly. He shows it differently. He has so much tenderness in him. He can be difficult, but he's kind. She paused. And honestly, he's not kind to everyone. Serena stood up, walking around the room. But is that enough? The question changed the mood. Chloe, is that enough to spend 40 years of your life with someone? Chloe looked at her. Serena softened her voice. I know he's wealthy, I know he's successful. But you know what people say about wealthy, powerful men. They cheat, they disappear, they get bored, they hurt people. She shook her head. Are you going to be happy with someone who is only fond of you? Don't you deserve someone who is completely, undeniably in love with you? Chloe opened her mouth to respond. But Serena continued. Because I know what you're going to say. Tate isn't like other men. Chloe looked down. Serena nodded. He doesn't rush. He doesn't fall quickly. He doesn't wear his heart on his sleeve. She sighed. And maybe with Tate, love doesn't happen in a moment. Maybe it happens over years. Chloe squeezed Brooke's hand. I know. Her voice was quiet but certain. If Tate falls in love with someone. She smiled faintly. It might take years. A pause. But I'll wait. In the kitchen, Noah didn't know what to think. Because part of him wanted to dismiss it. To tell himself Chloe was hoping for something that might never happen. But another part of him knew something uncomfortable. Tate had always been slow. Careful. Terrified of change. Tate had spent years proving that he could hold onto something forever without ever explaining why. And Noah wondered if that was what hurt the most. Not knowing whether Tate felt nothing. Or whether Tate felt something so complicated that even Tate couldn't name it. Noah hadn't seen Tate since the day he moved out of the Rambler. June 2, 1994. By April 2, 1995, almost 10 months had passed. 10 months since Noah had watched Tate walk away from the house that had been their home for so long. 6 months since Chloe had returned from Milan. 6 months since Uncle Tim had died. And somehow through all of it, Tate had remained distant. After that one-night layover in Los Angeles, Tate still hadn't truly come home. Chloe had waited. She had expected him to return within weeks. Then months. A month passed after he left New York, and she finally had to accept that the business merger was taking far longer than anyone anticipated. Tate was trying to combine two companies. Every day brought another meeting. Another negotiation. Another problem that needed his attention. Eventually, Chloe and Tate moved into their mansion. It was only 3 neighborhoods away from the old childhood home where Terrence and Talia still lived. Close enough that Noah could have seen them if he wanted. Close enough that everyone still knew what was happening in each other's lives. But Noah stayed away. He stopped going to Sunday dinners. He stopped attending family gatherings. He stopped putting himself in places where he might accidentally run into Tate. It wasn't because he hated them. That would have been easier. Hate was simple. What Noah felt was much more complicated. He missed Tate. That was the part he hated admitting. Even after everything. Even after the arguments. Even after realizing that Tate had built a life that Noah was no longer a part of. He still missed him. But seeing Tate and Chloe together felt like reopening a wound that had never completely healed. Everyone else seemed able to move forward. They could sit at dinner. They could laugh. They could talk about business, family, and the future. Noah couldn't. Because every time he imagined walking through that door and seeing Tate sitting there, he wasn't sure what would hurt more. Seeing that Tate was happy without him. Or realizing that Tate might still care about him but never in the way Noah had hoped. So Noah stayed away. He built his own routine. His own life. And he convinced himself that distance was better than constantly wondering what he meant to someone who had never been able to explain it. When Tate had come back to Los Angeles for that one night, Noah wasn't in the house. He had made sure of it. After Uncle Tim's funeral, Noah packed his suitcase and went back to the Rambler. He didn't want to be there. He didn't want to wake up in the middle of the night and hear footsteps in the hallway. He didn't want to walk toward the bathroom and accidentally run into Tate. He didn't want to go downstairs for a midnight snack and find Tate standing in the kitchen like nothing had changed. And more than anything, he didn't want to be lying in a room nearby while Tate and Chloe lived a life together that Noah had spent years secretly wondering if Tate would ever choose with him. So he left. It was easier to disappear than to pretend he was fine. Noah told himself it was practical. It was giving Tate space. It was respecting boundaries. But deep down he knew the truth. He was protecting himself. For months he hadn't seen Tate. Hadn't heard his voice. Hadn't had a conversation. Hadn't bumped into him accidentally in a hallway. Hadn't shared one of their strange, familiar moments where Tate would act like nothing in the world had changed. Not even a phone call. Nothing. The silence had become its own kind of answer. Noah had spent 22 years knowing exactly where Tate was. Even when they fought. Even when they disagreed. Even when Tate was impossible to understand. Tate was always there. And now he wasn't. Noah had spent years believing that if Tate ever left, it would be temporary. That eventually Tate would come back through the door, complain about something, make some sarcastic comment, and everything would return to normal. But this time was different. This time Tate had built another life. A mansion. A marriage. A future. And Noah was no longer standing beside him. He hadn't caught even a glimpse of Tate. Hadn't spoken to him. Hadn't accidentally shared a moment. Hadn't even heard him say his name over the phone. For someone who had spent most of his life being impossible for Tate to escape from, Noah found the absence almost unbearable. Because the hardest thing wasn't that Tate had left. It was that Tate seemed capable of leaving. And Noah was still standing exactly where he had been. Susie knocked on Noah's door. A few seconds later, the Rambler opened. Noah stood there surprised to see her. "Hey Susie, how's it going?" Susie smiled, holding up a small box. "I brought peace offerings." Noah looked down. "Danishes. From that cafe on the way over," she said. "I figured you might forget to eat while you're buried in your art." Noah rolled his eyes slightly but smiled. "Is it a bad time?" No, come on in." Susie stepped inside. "I was just finishing one of my pastoral art pieces." She glanced toward the room. "Is it another naked picture of Tate?" She said it with a teasing smirk. Noah immediately glared at her. "Why would I paint, draw, or sketch that asshole?" Susie raised her hands. Okay. He hasn't called me in 10 months. He paused. 10 months to the day, actually. Susie's expression softened. "Good point." She walked farther into the room, setting the pastries down. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Susie looked back at him. "But I have a question." Noah sighed. "That usually means trouble." Susie smiled. "If you walked into your bedroom right now." She paused. "And Tate was sitting there waiting for you." Noah looked at her. "Seriously?" "I'm serious." She crossed her arms. "Would you stick to your guns? Would you tell him to leave because he abandoned you for 10 months? Or would all of that disappear the second you saw him?" Noah looked away. Susie watched him carefully. "Because that's the thing, Noah. You can be angry. You have every reason to be. But I know you." She gestured around the room. "You're surrounded by memories of him, your paintings, your house, your entire history." Noah frowned. "He's still an asshole." Susie nodded. "Maybe. But if he was standing in front of you right now, I don't think you'd feel nothing." Noah didn't answer. And Susie noticed. Because sometimes silence answered questions people refused to say out loud. I told you, Noah said, taking the box of donuts from Susie, I buried all that 9 years ago. He opened the box and looked inside. My 27th birthday is in a few weeks and I am sick to death of hearing about Tate. He held out his hand dramatically. So give me one of those donuts and I'll let you stay. Susie laughed. Okay, okay. She handed one over. You don't have to be belligerent. Noah took a bite. That wasn't belligerent. Susie gave him a look. It was absolutely belligerent. He ignored her and went back to looking at his pastoral art piece. Susie smiled slightly but her expression softened. But don't lie and say you don't miss him. Noah didn't answer. He sat down at the table, staring at the painting in front of him. The silence lasted long enough that Susie knew she had hit the truth. Finally Noah looked up. So why are you really here? Susie raised an eyebrow. I told you I brought donuts. Noah shook his head. No. He pointed at her. You always have a reason you come over here. Susie sighed. You know me too well. Yeah, I do. She sat across from him. You're right. Noah waited. Talia asked me to come over. His expression immediately changed. Of course she did. She wants me to put some pressure on you to come to Sunday dinner. Noah leaned back. No. Just hear me out. No, Susie. It's been 10 months, Noah. He looked away. 10 months is enough. Susie's voice was gentle but firm. Come back to the family. Noah didn't respond. We miss you. She paused. And Sunday dinner is the one day of the week when everyone can actually be there. She started counting on her fingers. Jack. Anna. Everyone. They haven't seen you. She looked directly at him. Jack and Anna haven't seen you in more than 6 months. Noah's jaw tightened. You have every right to be angry at Tate. She shook her head. Honestly, you have every right to want to stab him with a fork after everything that's happened. Noah almost smiled despite himself. But don't make the rest of us suffer because of that asshole. The room went quiet. Susie leaned forward. Tate made his choices. But your family didn't. You disappearing doesn't punish him. It only hurts the people who love you. Noah looked back down at his painting. And Susie knew she had gotten through, even if he wasn't ready to admit it yet. Okay, Noah finally said. Susie looked up. Okay. He nodded. On June 11th. She smiled slightly. You're actually picking a date. Yes. Noah sat back in his chair. I'll host Sunday dinner here. Susie studied him carefully. Here. He looked around the Rambler. Give me 2 months. By then I'll be ready. Susie smiled. That's more reasonable than I expected. Noah ignored the comment. Once a month. What? I'll host it once a month at my house. He pointed toward the room. Everyone can come here. That way I know what I'm walking into. Susie understood immediately. And there is no chance Chloe or Tate just show up. His voice became firmer. They won't be invited. Susie sighed. Noah. No. He shook his head. If I have to go over to their house, I never know what's going to happen. I don't know if someone is going to drop by. I don't know if Tate is going to walk through the door. I don't know if I'm going to have to pretend everything is normal. He looked away. At least here I have control. Susie was quiet. She knew this wasn't really about dinner. It was about safety. It was about Noah creating a place where he didn't have to constantly wonder whether he was about to run into the person who had hurt him the most. There is no way in hell either of them will come over here, Noah said. Susie watched him. You really think Tate would never come? Noah immediately answered. He's had 10 months. A pause. He knows where I live. He knows how to call. He knows how to find me. Noah looked down at the table. He hasn't. Susie didn't argue. Because she knew that was the part that hurt him most. Not the anger. Not the resentment. The silence. June 11th, Susie repeated. Noah nodded. June 11th. And for the first time in months, there was something on the calendar that wasn't about what Noah had lost. It was about something he was choosing to rebuild. Noah didn't get even an hour of peace after Susie left. A knock at the front door interrupted the quiet. Noah looked up from his work. A small smile crossed his face. She must have forgotten something. He walked toward the door, expecting to see Susie standing there, probably holding her keys or coming back to make one last argument. But when he opened it, his expression changed. Talia stood on the porch. Tears were running down her cheeks. "Oh God, Noah." The sound of her voice immediately made his stomach tighten. Noah groaned. "Who died now?" Talia shook her head quickly. No. She stepped forward. "I just—" Her voice broke. "I thought you would never come to one of my dinners again." Before Noah could respond, she wrapped her arms around him. It wasn't a gentle hug. It was a Talia hug. The kind that made it impossible to escape. Noah laughed despite himself. Okay. He tried to pull back. "You're strangling me." Talia immediately loosened her grip. "Oh." She wiped her tears. "Sorry." Noah rubbed his shoulders dramatically. "I was trying to avoid family drama, not get crushed to death at my own front door." Talia laughed through her tears. "There he is." Noah looked at her. "What are you doing here, Talia?" She took a breath. "I wanted to see you." The answer was simple. And somehow that made it harder. "I know you've been hurting." Noah looked away. "I've been fine." Talia gave him a look. "Noah." He sighed. "Okay, I've been surviving." Her expression softened. "That's what I was afraid of." She looked past him into the Rambler. "Can I come in?" Noah hesitated. Then stepped aside. "Yeah." Talia walked inside, looking around the familiar house. The place that had once been filled with both of them. With memories. With laughter. With Tate. And Noah noticed the way she looked around. Like she wasn't just visiting a house. She was visiting someone who had been missing. "Susie told me you agreed to have one Sunday dinner at your house once a month." Noah looked suspicious. "That sounds about right." Talia crossed her arms. "Well, I don't like that idea." Noah raised an eyebrow. "I thought you wanted me to come back." "I do." She softened. "I love the idea of us coming here, Noah, I really do." She looked around the Rambler. "But I'm not going to accept seeing you only once a month." Noah sighed. "Talia." "No." She held up a hand. "We all miss you." She sat down. "So I talked with Andrew." Noah already knew where this was going. "And we're going to split the time." Noah looked at her. "Meaning?" "You can host one Sunday dinner a month here." She counted on her fingers. "One Sunday we'll do a restaurant. One Sunday will be at Andrew's. And the fourth Sunday someone else can volunteer." She smiled. "That way you aren't trapped in one location, but you're also not disappearing from everyone." Noah opened his mouth. Talia immediately continued. "And unless you have business or a legitimate reason you can't be there, I need to know at least 24 hours in advance." Noah stared at her. "You've turned family dinner into a doctor's appointment." Talia smiled. "Maybe." Then her expression softened. "But I know you. You'll find reasons not to go because avoiding people is easier than explaining your hurt." Noah looked down. She wasn't wrong. "Fine." Talia smiled. "Fine." He nodded. "I just need a little more time." "Of course." Her voice was gentle. "But June 11th. She pointed at him. "You better be here." Noah smiled. "Or what?" "I'll send Susie over." He laughed. "That's your threat?" "Yes." Talia nodded seriously. "She'll grab you by the ear and drag you to dinner herself." Noah laughed. "That I believe." Talia hugged him again before she left. This time she didn't squeeze quite as hard. 20 minutes later, Noah stood in the quiet Rambler, smiling to himself. Talia had always been like that. She pushed. She worried. She loved loudly. She was stubborn and impossible. But she showed up. Noah shook his head. She wasn't his biological mother. But sometimes she was the closest thing he had ever had to one. What happens if Tate wants to come to Sunday dinner? Noah asked the question quietly. Talia didn't look surprised. She had probably expected it. She smiled gently. Well, on the fourth Sunday of each month, if nobody volunteers to host, we'll do it at my house. Noah's expression tightened slightly. And Tate? Tate, Chloe, or whoever wants to come can come. Noah looked away. Talia noticed. And on those Sundays you don't have to come. Noah looked back at her. I won't be angry. She paused. I won't make you feel guilty. Her voice softened. But Noah. He knew from her tone that this was the important part. I really wish you would get over Tate's mishandlings. Noah frowned. Talia. I know. She held up her hand. I know you shouldn't have to just get over it. I know it hurts. I know 10 months of silence from someone who has been part of your life for over 20 years doesn't just disappear. Noah looked down. But we're tired. He looked up. Tired of what? Talia sighed. The blue elephant in the room. The phrase made him almost smile despite himself. You mean Tate? Yes. She nodded. Everyone knows. Everyone knows something happened. Everyone knows you aren't coming because of him. And everyone is pretending not to notice because they love you and they don't want to push you. She stepped closer. But pretending doesn't make it disappear. Noah was quiet. Talia touched his shoulder. I'm not asking you to forgive him. I'm not asking you to invite him into your home. I'm not asking you to pretend nothing happened. She paused. I'm asking you not to lose everyone else because one person hurt you. Noah swallowed. And if I see him? Then you decide what you need. If you need to leave, leave. If you need space, take it. But don't make a permanent decision while you're still bleeding from the wound. Noah looked away. Talia smiled sadly. You've spent 10 months protecting yourself. Maybe now it's time to let some people protect you. I'm not staying away because I'm trying to be some immature young man taking revenge. Noah's voice was calm, but there was an edge underneath it. I'm not trying to punish anyone. I'm not trying to make everyone uncomfortable. I'm not being petty or vindictive. Talia listened quietly. Noah looked down at his tennis shoes. I just don't want to be around him, Talia. He took a breath. And honestly, he made it pretty clear. Talia's expression softened. That note he left on my fridge a year ago. Noah shook his head. It was mean, it was insensitive, it made it pretty clear he didn't want me involved in his life anymore. He looked up. So I'm honoring his wishes. A pause. He doesn't get to be angry or upset because I'm doing exactly what he asked me to do. His jaw tightened. If he doesn't like it, then he can deal with the consequences. Treating people like they're disposable has consequences. Talia didn't interrupt. Noah continued. And honestly, he shrugged. I'm in a better mood when he's not around. The admission surprised even him. Chloe and I talked 6 months ago about the whole situation. We're fine. She didn't do anything wrong. He shook his head. I told her that when I'm not in the room with her, it has nothing to do with her. She's not the reason. It's just that right now, I don't want to put myself in situations where I'm constantly reminded of everything. Talia nodded slowly. In a year from now, I won't feel differently. Noah paused. His voice became quieter. I never want to see Tate again. The words hung in the room. And everyone is just going to have to deal with the blue elephant in the room. He gave a humorless laugh. It's not my fault. If everyone I knew acted their age and behaved in an adult, mature manner, there wouldn't be a blue elephant in the room. I always have to be the adult when it came to myself and Tate because he sure as hell wasn't going to be the adult in our damaged, severed relationship. Maybe everyone should go camp on Tate's porch and lecture him for a while. Talia opened her mouth, but Noah continued. I don't need to be lectured. I know what happened. I know what I need. He looked toward the window. If I want to reach out, that's my choice. But if Tate wants to fix anything, he gets to do it first. Noah crossed his arms. I'm giving him until a year passes. After that, He looked down. He can go to hell. Talia stayed quiet for a long moment. She didn't tell him he was wrong. She didn't tell him he had to forgive. Because she knew Noah well enough to understand something important. His anger wasn't really about revenge. It was about hurt. And sometimes the person who says they never want to see someone again is the person who once wanted that person to stay more than anyone. June 10th arrived quietly. Noah was asleep in the Rambler, the house finally peaceful after months of feeling too empty. Riley was sleeping beside him. Noah had asked his boyfriend to stay over that night not because anything physical had happened, but because sometimes the quiet of the house felt heavier than he wanted to admit. They weren't rushing anything. They hadn't defined nor consummated their relationship yet. They simply enjoyed being together. Talking. Laughing. Falling asleep beside each other. For Noah, that kind of uncomplicated comfort was something he hadn't realized he missed. Around 1 in the morning, the phone rang. The sharp sound cut through the quiet room. Both Noah and Riley immediately woke up. Noah sat up, confused and disoriented. Who is calling this late? Riley looked toward the phone as the ringing continued. Noah reached over and picked it up. Hello. For a moment there was only silence. Noah frowned. Hello. Then a voice finally answered. And the second Noah heard it, every trace of sleep disappeared. A half-hour later, Noah opened Talia's front door. The moment he stepped inside, a strange feeling of déjà vu washed over him. It felt too familiar. Coming into this house late at night. Something terrible having happened. Everyone gathering because of news that would change everything. Riley had decided to go home. He hadn't been introduced to the family yet, and Noah knew this wasn't the right moment. This wasn't the kind of night where he wanted to bring someone new into the middle of grief. I'll text you as soon as I get home, Noah had promised him. Riley understood. Now Noah stood inside Talia's living room. She was sitting on the couch, wiping at her eyes. Her face was red from crying. What happened? Noah sat down beside her. Talia took a shaky breath. Linus died. Noah froze. What? He died in his sleep a few hours ago. For a moment, Noah couldn't process the words. Linus. Gone. It didn't seem possible. Talia shook her head. He had a heart condition. Noah looked at her. I didn't know. Most people didn't. She wiped another tear away. He found out a few months ago, but he only told Terrence. Why? Talia gave a sad smile. Because it was Linus. He didn't want everyone worrying about him. Noah sat quietly. Was he sick? Talia shook her head. Not like that. Terrence said it wasn't supposed to be serious. Her voice cracked. His butler found him. Noah looked down. He was supposed to go to bed. She swallowed. But he fell asleep in his armchair. The butler tried to wake him up. Talia stopped. He didn't respond. A silence filled the room. He passed away peacefully. Noah leaned back stunned. How old was he? Talia's eyes filled again. 56. Noah closed his eyes. 56 was too young. It was another reminder that life could change without warning. Talia reached for her phone. I called Chloe and Tate. Noah's expression shifted slightly. They're coming. She nodded. They'll be here in about 20 minutes. The room became quiet again. Noah looked around the familiar living room. The place where his family had gathered countless times. The place where memories were made. And now, once again, everyone would come together because someone was gone. I should get going. Noah said it quietly. Talia immediately looked at him. What? Noah stood up from the couch. I don't want to be here when they arrive. He didn't need to explain who he meant. Talia knew. The moment Noah turned toward the door, Talia reached out and grabbed his arm. No. Noah stopped. Talia. No. Her voice was firm. You are not abandoning me because of that stupid elephant in the room. Noah looked at her. Talia, I just think it's better if... No. She tightened her grip slightly. You are going to sit here. She pointed toward the couch. You are going to be kind. You are going to be respectful. And you are not going to give me any trouble tonight. Noah gave her an incredulous look. Are you serious? Completely. He tried to move again. Talia pushed him gently back down onto the couch. No. Talia. I forbid it. Noah blinked. You forbid it. Yes. She crossed her arms. Do you understand me, Noah Lunas? He stared at her. You are not leaving this house. A tiny smile threatened to appear despite himself. Talia, you can't actually forbid me from leaving. I can tonight. She pointed at him. You are not going to pull a Tate Blue. The words made Noah pause. You are not going to disappear when things get difficult. Her voice softened. You are going to sit here. You are going to mourn with your family. And you're going to suck it up. Noah sighed. You always were terrifying when you got maternal. Talia smiled through her tears. Good. She sat back down. Maybe you need someone terrifying. For a moment, Noah didn't respond. Then he slowly settled back into the couch. Because as much as he hated admitting it, Talia was right. This wasn't about Tate. This wasn't about old wounds. This was about Linus. And tonight his family needed him. A half-hour later the doorbell rang. The sound echoed through the house. Talia looked toward the front door, then back at Noah. Would you go get that, please? Noah immediately looked at her. The expression on his face said everything. Pain. Resistance. A silent absolutely not. Talia sighed. Fine. She stood up. I'll get the door, you big baby. Noah rolled his eyes. That's mature. Talia ignored him as she walked toward the entryway. Then she stopped. She turned back around. Noah. He looked at her. Talia walked back over and placed a hand on top of his head. If I come back and you have left this room. She narrowed her eyes. To hide, escape, or suddenly discover you have somewhere else to be, we're going to have a problem. Noah stared at her hand. Talia. I'm serious. She gave him a look. You promise me you are going to sit right there and not move your little butt. Noah grimaced. That is the most ridiculous thing anyone has ever said to me. Promise. He sighed. Fine. Say it. I promise. Talia smiled. I'll hold you to it. Noah shook his head. You are unbelievable. And you're avoiding your family. She leaned down and kissed his forehead. I'll be back in a moment. Then she walked toward the door. Noah watched her leave. He wanted to be annoyed. He wanted to complain. But underneath it all he knew something. Talia wasn't trying to force him into a confrontation. She was trying to remind him that he still belonged somewhere. Even if one person in that family had hurt him. There was a commotion out in the hallway. Noah looked toward the doorway. At first he couldn't make out the words, but he could hear Talia's voice. She was upset. Not just sad. Angry. The kind of anger that only came from someone who was hurting. The living room door opened. Chloe stepped inside quietly. She didn't say anything at first. She simply walked over and sat in the chair beside the couch where Noah was sitting. Noah glanced at her. For a moment neither of them spoke. Then Talia's voice carried from the hallway. That fucking asshole decides he's not going to show up for another funeral. Noah froze. Talia continued. His own godfather. He doesn't show up for his uncle. Then he doesn't show up for the other uncle. And now he's not showing up for his godfather's funeral. Noah looked down. He didn't need to ask who she was talking about. He already knew. Chloe sat quietly beside him. Talia's voice grew louder. What am I supposed to do with him? He acts like he doesn't care. Like everyone else just disappears and he's above it all. Noah felt something twist inside his chest. Because for years, Tate had always seemed impossible to understand. He could be incredibly loving. Protective. Gentle. And then, when things became too painful, he could disappear completely. Noah looked at Chloe. She wasn't angry. She looked exhausted. Like she had heard versions of this conversation before. Talia came into the living room, still visibly upset. She stopped when she saw Chloe and Noah sitting together. For a moment the anger faded into sadness. Noah didn't need an explanation. He already understood. Tate wasn't coming. Not for Linus. Not for the family. Not for the people who had loved him. And somehow that hurt almost as much as everything else. Because even after 10 months apart, even after everything Noah had told himself, a small part of him still hoped that when something truly mattered, Tate would show up. Give me your phone. Noah looked up at Talia. What? I said give me your phone. Noah immediately shook his head. I don't want to be a part of this. Talia turned and looked at him. Not a normal look. A Talia look. The kind that made it very clear she had already made up her mind. Noah. He hesitated. Talia, I really don't think. Give me the phone. Noah sighed. He knew arguing wasn't going to work. Slowly he reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone and handed it to her. Talia took it. Thank you. Noah watched her cautiously. You realize this is a terrible idea, right? Talia ignored him. She started dialing. Every number she entered came with a quiet curse under her breath. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. After everything. Noah sat there watching his surrogate mother with a mixture of concern and amusement. Chloe looked away, already knowing who Talia was calling. The phone rang. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then the call connected. Hello. Tate's voice came through the speaker. The entire room went quiet. Talia straightened. Tatum Joseph Cornelius Blue. The way she said his full name made Noah immediately sit up. Tate was silent for a moment. Talia. Her voice was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that meant she was holding back a storm. You better be at the funeral in 2 days. A pause. Talia, No. She cut him off. You listen to me. Her grip tightened around the phone. Linus was your godfather. He loved you. He was there for you. And now you're going to disappear again. The room remained silent. Noah looked down. He didn't want to hear this. But he couldn't look away either. Talia continued. You better be there in 2 days. Her voice became sharper. Or so help me God. She took a breath. I am changing my will. Chloe looked toward the floor. Even she knew Talia wasn't making an empty threat. Talia wasn't angry because Tate was inconvenient. She was angry because she loved him. Because she had watched him run from pain his entire life. And she was tired of watching him leave people behind. Talia. No. Her voice softened slightly. Just show up, Tate. A long silence followed. Then Talia waited for his answer. Fine. Tate's voice came through the speaker. But it wasn't agreement. It was defiance. The kind of defiance that made everyone in the room tense. I'll piss on his grave the next time I'm in town after I urinate on Joey's and Tim's tombstones. The room went completely still. Noah's eyes widened. For a moment he couldn't believe what he had heard. Talia's face changed instantly. The anger she had been holding shifted into something deeper. Hurt. Tate. But before she could continue, Tate cut her off. I'm not going to that bastard's funeral. His voice was cold. He can kiss my well-defined muscular ass. Noah looked down. He had spent months being angry at Tate. Months feeling abandoned. But hearing Tate talk about Linus like that still shocked him. Because whatever Tate's problems were, Linus had loved him. Chloe sat frozen in the chair beside Noah. She looked devastated. Not angry. Just disappointed. Tate, Talia said firmly. Her voice had changed. She wasn't pleading anymore. I want you at the funeral. No excuses. The line went silent. For several seconds nobody spoke. Noah could hear the faint sound of breathing through the speaker. Then Tate finally responded. Make me bitch. The words hung in the room. Noah flinched. Even Talia seemed stunned for half a second. Then the call ended. The line clicked. Silence returned. Talia stood there holding Noah's phone. Her hand slowly lowered. Chloe stared at the floor. Noah didn't know what to say. He had expected Tate to be angry. He had expected resistance. But the cruelty of it still caught him off guard. Talia. His voice was quiet. She didn't answer. She just looked at the phone. For all her anger, all her frustration, all the times she had defended Tate, She looked like someone who had just heard a child she loved say something impossible to take back. Chloe finally spoke. "He's not okay." Noah looked at her. She swallowed. "I know everyone thinks he's just being cruel." She shook her head. "But that's not normal, not even for him." Noah didn't respond. Because he didn't know if that made him feel better or worse. Talia wiped her eyes. "I don't understand him." Her voice cracked. "I don't understand how someone can love people so much and still push every single one of them away." Noah looked toward the phone in her hand. 10 months. 10 months of silence. And now when Tate finally spoke, it wasn't an apology. It wasn't an explanation. It was anger. And somehow that hurt almost more. The side door opened. A moment later, Susie and Anna walked inside. "Sorry we're late." Susie looked around the room. Then, as usual, she immediately brought her personality with her. "Is the asshole going to show up this time?" She glanced toward Talia. "Or is he going to be like Santa Claus and only show up once a year?" Anna gave Susie a look. "Susie." "What?" Susie shrugged. "I'm just asking." Then she noticed Talia's face. The humor disappeared. "Oh." She looked between everyone. "I guess the asshole already called." Nobody answered. Susie sighed. "Let me guess. He's busy somewhere else doing something that isn't grieving and attending a funeral." Talia slowly sat down on the couch. The anger that had been holding her upright seemed to disappear. She looked exhausted. How did I raise such an egotistical, narcissistic, self-centered, and inappropriate young man? The room went quiet. Then Talia looked at Susie. "Don't answer that." Susie pressed her lips together. "Wasn't planning on it." Talia rubbed her forehead. "I swear." She shook her head. "The things he says. The things he does." Susie sat down across from her. "What did he say?" Talia looked away. "He said he would piss on Linus's grave." Anna's expression changed. Even Susie went quiet. "Okay." A pause. "That's impressive even for Tate." Talia looked at her. "Susie." "What?" She held up her hands. "I'm not defending him. I'm just saying he has a talent for finding the worst possible thing to say at the worst possible moment." Talia sighed. "I wanted to rip his head off." Susie nodded. "I understand." Talia looked down. "I could rip his balls off the next time I see him." Susie gave a small smile. "Honestly." She shook her head. "You might have to get in line." Despite everything, Noah almost smiled. "Almost." Susie leaned back. "But you have to admit one thing." Talia looked at her. "What?" "Tate is consistent." Nobody spoke. Susie continued. "He doesn't show favoritism." She counted on her fingers. "He doesn't ignore only one person. He doesn't disappoint only one person. He has somehow managed to make everyone equally frustrated." On a side. "That is not the comforting statement you think it is." Susie shrugged. "I'm just saying." Talia looked toward the floor. The joke faded. Because underneath the anger, everyone knew the truth. They weren't furious because Tate was inconvenient. They were furious because they loved him. And they were tired of watching him hurt himself and everyone around him. Talia didn't hesitate. She picked up the phone again. Everyone in the room watched her. Noah immediately recognized the look on her face. This was not a mother who was going to give up. The phone rang. Once. Then Tate answered. Immediately. "Mother." His voice was already irritated. "I swear if this is you again, I am not picking up ever again." Talia's expression hardened. "This is your mother." She took a breath. Totem Joseph Cornelius Blue. The room went silent. Noah almost felt sorry for him. "Almost. I have had it with your attitude. I have had it with the way you speak to people. And I have had it with the spoon being shoved so far up your very narrow behind that you think the entire world revolves around you. You will get your narrow ass to Linus's funeral, or so help me God, I will regret pushing your head out my pooper where you came from." Chloe choked on her tea. She covered her mouth, trying not to laugh despite the situation. Talia continued. You are going to be at that funeral. Do you understand me? Or so help me God, I will personally make sure you regret making your mother repeat herself. Talia. No. Her voice softened but only slightly. I want you there. A pause. I'm sick of grieving people alone. Her voice cracked. I'm sick of standing at funerals wondering where my son is. Noah looked down. The word hit harder than he expected. Son. Because no matter how angry she was, Talia still loved Tate. Now, she continued, you are going to stop disappointing your mother and do one thing right. A pause. In 10 years. Then she added. Besides marrying Chloe, of course. Tate sighed loudly through the phone. The kind of sigh someone made when they believed they were being inconvenienced. I can't attend. Talia narrowed her eyes. Why? A moment passed. Then Tate answered. I'm attending a 7-day orgy. Silence. Absolute silence. Talia blinked. What did you just say? I'm celebrating. A pause. The death of my godfather. Talia looked stunned. What do you mean you are celebrating the death of your godfather? Her voice rose. Tate, are you being serious? Are you really this insensitive? Tate laughed on the other end. Oh, mother, don't ask me questions when Susie is right there and can give you the answers. Don't be such a drag. Just because you're in your early 50s doesn't mean you have to act like you have one foot in the grave. Noah's face tightened. Chloe looked away. Even she seemed uncomfortable. Tate continued. Anyone who wants me to come back can get fucked. Tate's voice came through the phone, sharp and bitter. Because I'm not showing up to mourn a man who. There was a pause. Tate's voice continued through the phone. The room became completely silent. Seduced Noah in a shower and slept with every girl I knew in high school. The words landed heavily. Noah stopped breathing for a moment. Chloe looked over at him, her expression changing as if she was trying to understand a piece of a story she had never been told. Talia's face went still. Not angry. Not anymore. Just stunned. Now, if you don't have anything better to do than harass me. Tate's voice came through the phone, colder now. Get bent. Talia opened her mouth to respond, but Tate continued. I'll be home when I'm home. A pause. Try and rush me and I won't come back immediately. His voice sharpened. Just to spite all of you. Before anyone could say another word, the line went dead. Click. The silence that followed was almost worse than the argument. Talia slowly lowered the phone. For several seconds she just stared at it. Then she looked across the room. At Noah. Her expression had changed. The anger was gone. The frustration was gone. All that remained was confusion and sadness. Linus did. Noah looked at her. What? Talia swallowed. Linus did that. Nobody answered. The question wasn't really directed at them. Noah quietly stood up. He had heard enough. The moment the conversation shifted toward him, he knew what was coming next. Questions. Explanations. Everyone looking at him like he was suddenly part of a mystery they needed to solve. He started moving toward the kitchen. He almost made it. Almost. Stop right there, young man. Talia's voice froze him. Noah closed his eyes. He slowly turned around. Talia. Sit down. He knew better than to argue. With a sigh, Noah walked back over and sat on the couch. The room was quiet. Everyone was looking at him. Talia's voice softened. When did Lena seduce you? Noah immediately looked down. It wasn't like that. Talia waited. Noah rubbed his hands together. The last time he was in this house. A pause. Last year. Talia's expression changed. Last year. Noah nodded. The last time he was here. Her voice was almost a whisper. Noah. He looked up. I was 26. He shrugged. It's not a big deal. The room stayed silent. He asked. Noah swallowed. I said no, and that was it. He looked between them. He didn't force anything, he didn't do anything after I said no. Noah leaned back. We were both adults. Talia looked stunned. Noah continued, trying to make everyone understand. He was lonely, Talia. He wasn't a monster or some kind of pervert. He made a pass, but it didn't go anywhere. Noah looked away. We're all adults. A pause. If he found me attractive. He shrugged. That doesn't mean anything happened. He was probably drunk. Chloe watched Noah carefully. Because everyone else was seeing the situation for the first time. But Noah had already processed it. Already decided how he felt about it. For him, it wasn't the same as what Tate was describing. It was uncomfortable. It was awkward. But it wasn't something he had carried as trauma. Talia, however, looked shaken. Because she wasn't just hearing about one moment. She was realizing that Noah had been carrying an entirely different version of the past than everyone else knew. Talia looked mortified. For several seconds she just stared at Noah. Then she shook her head slowly. I am so sorry, Noah. Noah immediately tried to dismiss it. Talia. No. Her voice was soft but firm. Linus should never have done that. She swallowed. Especially knowing your history with Tate. Noah looked down. Talia wiped at her eyes. I mean. She gave a sad, disbelieving laugh. You might as well be everyone's nephew at this point. She looked around the room. Officially or not. Noah didn't say anything. Because he knew what she meant. He had been around for so long that the lines had blurred years ago. He wasn't a stranger. He wasn't just Tate's childhood friend. He was family. Talia sniffled. That man has known you since you were 4 years old. She shook her head. 4. A pause. And he was 33. The room became quiet. He watched you grow up. He watched you and Tate become inseparable. He knew exactly how important you were to all of us. Noah looked at his hands. Talia's voice cracked. That should have meant something. Noah tried to speak. He didn't hurt me, Talia. She looked at him. I know you feel that way. And I'm grateful nothing worse happened. She took a breath. But that doesn't mean it was appropriate. Noah didn't argue. Because he knew she wasn't angry at him. She was angry for him. And maybe that was harder to accept. For years, Noah had been the person who protected everyone else's feelings. Now someone was finally acknowledging his. It wasn't inappropriate to me. Noah's voice was calm. Everyone looked at him. He was just a lonely old man who came on to me. Talia's expression tightened. Noah. I'm serious. He held up a hand. I turned him down. He looked down for a moment. And honestly, a small shrug. It was kind of flattering. The room went quiet. Someone found me attractive, someone noticed me. Noah gave a faint, almost self-deprecating smile. I'm a very attractive man, of course people are going to notice me. Chloe watched him carefully. Because she understood what Noah was doing. He was making it smaller. Making it easier to accept. He was probably embarrassed afterward, Noah continued. He probably realized he crossed a line. He was drunk. Noah looked around the room. And after I said no, he stopped. He never brought it up again. Talia looked conflicted. She understood what Noah was saying. Nothing happened after he refused. Linus respected the boundary once it was made clear. But she also understood something Noah wasn't saying. That didn't erase the discomfort. It didn't erase the fact that someone who had known him since childhood had put him in that position. Noah, Talia said quietly, you don't have to make excuses for him. I'm not. He answered quickly. I'm just telling you what happened. A pause. In how I felt about it. Noah leaned back. I don't want everyone acting like something horrible happened when it didn't. The room stayed silent. Because that was Noah. Even now. Even when something uncomfortable happened to him, he was still trying to make sure nobody else carried too much pain. Susie finally interrupted. I told Tate all about it. Everyone but Noah looked at her. Talia frowned. You did what? Susie shrugged. I caught Noah sneaking out of Linus's shower session. Noah's face immediately changed. Susie. What? She raised her hands. I'm just saying what happened. Talia looked between them. You knew about this? Susie nodded. Yes. She glanced at Noah. And Tate was not happy. Noah looked down. That actually didn't surprise him. Of all the things Tate had been angry about over the past 12 months, someone crossing a boundary with Noah was probably one of the few things that would have instantly gotten through his defenses. "We finally got a rise out of Tate," Susie said. A small smirk appeared on her face. "I honestly thought it was funny." Talia stared at her. "Funny. Not the situation." Susie clarified quickly. The fact that Tate, who usually acts like nothing in the world bothers him, suddenly became this protective, angry mess. She shook her head. It was the most emotional I'd seen him get since he left the Rambler. Noah didn't say anything. Because he remembered. He remembered Tate's reaction. The anger. The way Tate looked at him afterward. Like someone had threatened something that belonged to him. But Noah also remembered everything that came after. The distance. The silence. The way Tate could care deeply about someone and still find a way to leave. Susie looked at Noah. Believe it or not, he cared. Noah's jaw tightened slightly. I know. The room became quiet. Because that was the hardest part. Noah had never doubted that Tate cared. He doubted whether Tate knew how to stay. Noah wanted to clarify something before he changed the topic. My sex life isn't anybody's business. Noah's voice cut through the room. Everyone looked at him. Especially Tate's. He shook his head. It never was and it never will be. There was a firmness in his voice now. Even if I had done something with Linus, it would have been my decision and my business. A pause. But I didn't. He shrugged. Because honestly, it would have made everything awkward. Noah looked around the room. But that's not the point. He leaned back on the couch. Can we please get off the subject of my sex life? A few people exchanged glances. Noah sighed. I have a date with Riley in 2 hours. That caught Talia's attention. Noah continued. And I would really rather not spend the rest of my evening talking about a man twice my age. Susie raised her eyebrows slightly. Fair. Noah gave her a look. Thank you. He stood up slightly then sat back down. This entire conversation somehow went from Linus dying to everyone discussing who finds me attractive. He shook his head. I don't know how that happened. For the first time in several minutes, there was a small bit of humor in the room. Because despite the grief, despite the anger, despite everything complicated sitting between them, Noah was still Noah. And sometimes the best way to survive an impossible conversation was to remind everyone when it had gone too far. Linus's funeral was just like Joey's and Tim's. There was a ceremony at the church, followed by a memorial service at the cemetery. Family and friends gathered together, sharing stories, remembering his life, and saying goodbye. Linus was laid to rest in the family plot. The same place where generations of the Blue family had been buried. The same place where they had said goodbye before. And once again, one person was missing. Tate. At this point, nobody even looked toward the entrance anymore. Nobody waited. Nobody whispered, wondering if he was running late. They already knew. After everything that had happened, after the phone calls and the arguments, they knew Tate wasn't coming. When the service ended and everyone returned to Tate's childhood mansion for food and conversation, the mood was quieter than anyone expected. People tried to be polite. They tried to focus on Linus. But the absence was still there. The empty space where Tate should have been. Eventually, Talia excused herself. I'm going upstairs for a little while. Nobody argued. Everyone knew she needed a moment. She walked up to the room where she had spent years raising her son. The disappointment weighed heavily on her. It wasn't just that Tate missed a funeral. It was that he had chosen not to be there. For Linus. For the family. For her. Talia sat down exhausted. She had spent years making excuses for Tate. She had told herself he was hurt. That he was struggling. That he didn't know how to handle grief. And maybe some of that was true. But this time felt different. This time she was the one left grieving. She was his mother. And her son didn't seem to understand that his choices hurt the people who loved him. For once, Talia wondered if she had been too forgiving. Maybe she had overlooked too much. Maybe she had protected him from consequences for too long. And maybe this time, She wasn't going to excuse his selfishness. After the funeral was over, everyone decided they wanted to go to a restaurant and spend the evening remembering Linus. It wasn't going to be a celebration. It was going to be a chance to share stories. To laugh a little. To cry a little. To remember the man they had lost. Noah, however, felt completely drained. The last few days had been emotionally exhausting. Between losing Linus, hearing things he never expected to hear, and dealing with the complicated feelings surrounding Tate, he felt like he had nothing left. "I'm tired," Noah admitted. Talia immediately softened. "Then go rest." She didn't argue. She knew. Noah had been close to Linus for years. Especially after Joey and Tim died. Especially after Tate disappeared from his life. Linus had become someone Noah could talk to. Someone who was there when so many other things in Noah's life felt uncertain. The loss hit harder than Noah wanted to admit. "I think I'm just going to stay here tonight," Noah said. Talia nodded. "That's okay." She understood. The last thing she wanted was for Noah to force himself to socialize when he was grieving. The plan was for everyone to stay out for several hours. Talia had even offered to put everyone up at a hotel so they could spend the night together and not worry about rushing back home. "We aren't coming back tonight," Talia assured him. She looked around the house. "You'll have the mansion completely to yourself." Noah gave a small nod. It felt strange. The house that had always been full of noise, arguments, laughter, and family gatherings would finally be quiet. For once, Noah could grieve privately. He could walk through the rooms. He could remember Linus. He could just exist without having to explain how he felt. Talia squeezed his shoulder before leaving. "Get some rest." Noah nodded. "I will." And for the first time in a long time, the Blue family home was going to belong to Noah alone. Before Talia left the house, she stopped at the doorway. "Oh, Noah." He looked over. "The furnace broke down last night." Noah raised his eyebrows. "What?" She sighed. Apparently it decided to give up at the worst possible time. She looked around the large house. "It's going to be cold in here." "How cold?" Talia hesitated. "Last night when the furnace broke down it was 48 degrees. Noah frowned. 48. "Yes." She pointed toward the back of the house. "If you wake up in the middle of the night and you're freezing, go outside and turn on the generator." She smiled slightly. "You know where it is." Noah nodded. "Okay. You won't have any issues, the generator works fine, it's just the furnace that decided it wanted attention." Talia grabbed her purse. The rest of the family was already waiting. She paused before leaving. "You sure you're okay staying here?" Noah nodded. "I'll be fine." Talia studied him for a moment. She knew him well enough to know when he was trying to be stronger than he felt. But she also knew he needed space. "All right." She gave him a small smile. "Get some rest." Then she left. Within minutes the house became quiet. The voices faded. The cars pulled away. The front door closed. And suddenly Noah was alone in the mansion. He stood there for a moment, taking in the silence. It felt strange. This house had always been full of people. Memories. Arguments. Laughter. Now it was just him. Noah eventually went upstairs. Before going to sleep in an hour, he would call Riley. They were supposed to have gone on their date the night before, but everything had changed. The funeral. The planning. The family gathering. None of it had left room for anything else. They had decided to postpone their date for another week. Noah smiled faintly as he looked at Riley's name on his phone. After everything that had happened, he needed something normal. Something uncomplicated. Something that wasn't about Tate. He pressed the call button. Noah picked up his phone and called Riley. The phone rang twice. Then Riley answered. "Hey, handsome." Noah smiled faintly. "Hey." Riley's voice softened. "How's everything going?" Noah let out a tired laugh. "Okay." A pause. Everyone went to a restaurant after the funeral. They wanted to remember Linus and talk about him. He looked around the quiet mansion. "I'm kind of tired though, so I decided to stay home." Riley immediately understood. "You're still at the mansion." Yeah. Noah leaned against the wall. I'm staying here tonight, everyone else is going to a hotel. He sighed. I'm just drained, Riley, emotionally strung out. His voice lowered. I needed some quiet. There was a small pause. I just wanted to call you before I take a shower and go to bed. On the other end, Noah heard movement. It sounded like Riley had sat up. Did I wake you up? No. Riley paused. Well, maybe a little bit. Noah smiled. But it's okay. A small laugh came through the phone. I had a little too much to drink at dinner, so I came back to my apartment and laid down. Noah smiled. Well, you get some rest then. He glanced toward the staircase. I'll let you go, I need to take my shower. A pause. Wednesday, we'll finally get to that hot date we had to move. Riley laughed. Sounds good. Then his voice became softer. Call me tomorrow if you want to talk, okay? Noah nodded even though Riley couldn't see him. Okay. Good night, Noah. Good night, Riley. The call disconnected. Noah stood there for a moment holding his phone. For the first time all day, he felt a little lighter. Riley was simple. Comforting. No funeral. No arguments. No complicated history. Just someone who cared. Noah placed his phone down and headed upstairs to take a shower. The third level of the Blue Mansion still felt wrong in a way he couldn't quite explain to himself. Noah had been in this house a few times since Tate had left a year ago today, but in the night it was kind of spooky. Not unfamiliar, he knew the layout, but emotionally out of date, like stepping into a version of the house that had stopped being actively used but hadn't been erased. 2 doors down from Tate's old bedroom at the end of the hallway was the bathroom Noah remembered using whenever he stayed over. He stopped for a moment outside the door. The memories came back immediately. This had been their bathroom. His and Tate's. They had shared everything on this floor. The sink. The shower. The small routines that came with spending so much time together. It was strange standing there now, years later, alone in the quiet house. The bathroom itself had always been a little unusual. There wasn't a toilet in it. Just the sink, the shower, and the space where they had gotten ready in the mornings or before going out. If someone needed to use the actual bathroom, they had to walk upstairs to the 4th floor or go all the way downstairs to the ground level. Noah remembered how inconvenient it could be. Especially late at night. But back then he hadn't cared. Because staying at the mansion meant being close to Tate. It meant being part of a world that felt bigger than his own. He stepped inside and turned on the light. The room looked almost exactly the same. The same fixtures. The same layout. The same echoes. For a moment, Noah could almost imagine being younger again. Tate standing nearby, complaining about something. The two of them arguing over who used the mirror first. The ordinary moments that had somehow become the memories Noah held onto the most. He shook his head slightly. Those days were gone. Now he was just a guest in a house full of ghosts. Noah grabbed his towel and stepped toward the shower, trying not to think too much about how many years of his life were tied to this place. Noah paused in the bathroom doorway, the mirror fogged at the edges from age rather than use, while he exhaled and shook his head at himself. Of course, he muttered. Still, he was already here, and he needed to get ready for bed. He set his phone on the counter, tugged his shirt over his head and stepped into the shower space, pulling the curtain across more out of habit than necessity. The towel went over the rod, not fully thought through, just a quick, practical placement so it wouldn't fall. The water started warm. For a few seconds everything felt normal enough that his brain stopped resisting it. Steam began to build, softening the edges of the room. Noah leaned one hand against the tiled wall, letting the noise of the water drown out the lingering tension he hadn't fully named since arriving. It should have stayed that simple, but somewhere in the back of his mind a small, instinctive awareness flickered, something about where he was in the house, about how close this bathroom was to a room he had spent a long time not thinking about. He shut it down quickly. Not now, just a shower, just a date, just a normal evening. Noah wouldn't jerk off thinking about Tate in this bathroom, not in this house, even though he jerked off several times a day thinking about Tate in his own house. Noah would be strong and not give in to temptation. He tilted his head back under the water, And for a moment, only a moment, he let himself believe it. Noah twisted the faucet shut, the last droplets pattering against the tiled floor of the guest bathroom on the second level. Steam lingered in the air, curling around his bare skin as he grabbed the thick towel from the rack. He rubbed it over his damp hair first, then down his chest and arms, the fabric absorbing the moisture from his recent shower. The house felt eerily quiet, just as Talia had described, empty, with everyone gone for the evening. It was the perfect spot to crash for a night, away from the chaos of his own place, or so he'd thought even after the funeral, except his brain had other ideas. Wrapped loosely in the towel around his waist, Noah padded down the hallway, feet silent on the worn carpet. The lower floors had been fine, but something about the upper levels drew him upward, maybe the promise of a quieter space, or just curiosity about the old Victorians' layout. While Noah got dressed in the bathroom after his shower, memories came back in pieces. 10 years. 10 years of him and Tate sharing the space. The laughter. The teasing. The way they would push each other out of the way, arguing over who got the best spot under the shower head. Back then it had felt completely normal. They were just two kids who had grown up together, comfortable enough around each other that privacy didn't seem important. But after Tate's 15th birthday, things changed. Tate stopped using this bathroom with Noah. At first, Noah thought it was just another one of Tate's moods. Tate had become more particular about things. The temperature of the water. The time he spent getting ready. The way he wanted his routines done. Eventually, Tate started using the bathroom on the 4th floor instead, leaving Noah alone. He remembered asking why once. Tate had simply complained that the water wasn't good enough downstairs. It was too cold. Not comfortable enough. Noah had laughed at the time. That was Tate. Everything had to be exactly the way Tate wanted it. But standing there now, older and alone, Noah realized how many small changes had happened over the years. Little things that seemed meaningless at the time. Moments where Tate had slowly started creating distance. Noah dried his hair and looked around the bathroom. He wondered if Tate even remembered those years. The silly arguments. The laughter. The ordinary moments that had meant everything to Noah. Because those were the memories Noah carried. Not the grand gestures. Not the dramatic moments. Just Tate beside him laughing before everything became complicated. He climbed the stairs to the 4th floor, the air growing cooler and mustier with each step. The walk up to the 4th floor was rare for Noah. Even after all the years he had spent at the mansion, that part of the house had always felt separate. Different. Almost like crossing into another world. The lower floors belonged to everyone. The kitchens. The dining rooms. The family rooms where people gathered, argued, laughed, and made memories. The 4th floor was different. It was quieter. More private. Noah knew it was usually off-limits except for certain areas, like the bathroom he occasionally had to use when he stayed over. The rest of the floor belonged to the inner workings of the Blue family. One of Terrence's studies was located there, along with rooms that were rarely seen by guests. Unless you were officially part of the Blue family, you weren't supposed to wander around. The 4th and 5th floors were considered private. Not because they were mysterious, but because they were where the family handled things away from everyone else. Business. Meetings. Personal matters. The 5th floor was where Talia and Terrence had their private penthouse area. It wasn't just one bedroom. The space was almost like a separate home inside the mansion. There were multiple bedrooms, sitting areas, offices, and rooms that had been used for storage over the years. A place designed for privacy. For family conversations. For moments they didn't want the rest of the world to see. Noah remembered how, when he was younger, he had always wondered what was up there. Not because he wanted to invade anyone's privacy. He was just curious. The mansion had always felt enormous to him. Like there were entire parts of it that belonged to a world he could see but never fully enter. Tate, however, had always moved through the house like he belonged everywhere. Of course he did. It was his home. His family. His name was on the walls in ways Noah's never could be. Noah reached the 4th floor landing. The hallway was quiet. The lights were dim. He stood there for a moment, remembering how different things had been. When he was younger, walking this hallway had meant following Tate. It meant being invited into places because Tate was there. Now he was walking alone. He wasn't here because Tate had called him. He wasn't here because they were laughing together. He was here because a funeral had brought him back into a house he had spent months avoiding. Noah looked down the hallway toward the bathroom. The same place. The same house. But everything felt different. He walked slowly forward. Part of him expected to hear Tate's voice. A complaint. A joke. Anything. But the hallway stayed silent. And somehow, that silence was louder than any argument they had ever had. His bladder nudged him insistently, the shower had filled it up and he needed a toilet now. A door at the end of the narrow corridor caught his eye, plain, slightly ajar with a faint sliver of light spilling out. He approached without hesitation, hand on the knob, twisting it open and stepping inside. The bathroom was dimly lit by a single bulb overhead, casting long shadows across the porcelain sink and the clawfoot tub in the corner. And there, at the toilet against the far wall, stood Tate. Noah froze mid-step, towel clutched tighter around his hips, heart slamming into his ribs like a trapped animal. Tate's back was to him, broad shoulders tense under a faded black t-shirt, jeans shoved down just enough around his thighs. His belt hung unbuckled, leather dangling loose, and his semi-hard dick midstream poured a steady arc into the bowl. The sound of it hitting water echoed sharply in the confined space, unbroken by any other noise. Tate didn't turn, didn't flinch, but Noah knew he'd been heard. The door's creak had been unmistakable. Standing in the doorway of the upstairs bathroom, Noah's eyes settled on Tate before anyone else seemed to notice him. For a long moment he simply stared. Everything about Tate looked wrong. Or perhaps not wrong, just unfamiliar. His posture was different. He stood taller than Noah remembered, his shoulders no longer carrying the constant tension that had once made him seem ready to bolt at a moment's notice. Even the way he held his hands at his sides was calmer, more deliberate. Then there were the clothes. Noah had never seen Tate dressed like that before. The rugged, predictable style Noah had grown accustomed to over the years was gone, replaced by something entirely different. It was subtle enough that most people probably wouldn't have thought twice about it, but Noah noticed every detail. The man standing before him didn't resemble the Tate he had loved. He looked like a stranger wearing Tate's face. Or maybe Noah simply couldn't remember who Tate had been anymore. It had been exactly 1 year. 1 year to the day since Tate had walked away. No argument. No dramatic goodbye. No explanation. No justification. Just gone. For 12 months, Noah had lived with questions that refused to be answered. He had replayed their last conversations until he could recite them from memory, searching for a clue he might have missed. Had he said something wrong? Had he failed Tate somehow? Had there been someone else? Every possibility ended where it had begun, with silence. Tate had never told him why. He never called. He never texted. He never wrote a letter. He never sent word through a mutual friend. He hadn't reached out on Noah's birthday. He hadn't reached out during the holidays. He hadn't even accidentally bumped into Noah somewhere around town, as though the entire world had conspired to keep them apart. For an entire year, Tate had vanished from Noah's life without leaving so much as a trace. The silence had become its own answer, even if Noah had never understood what it meant. And now, after 12 endless months, Tate was standing only a few feet away. Different. Older. Almost unrecognizable. Noah realized with a painful ache that he no longer knew the man looking back at him. Not because he had forgotten Tate, but because Tate had left without giving Noah the chance to understand who he had become or why he had disappeared in the first place. The man standing before him was not the Tate Noah remembered. It was as though someone had found a man who looked vaguely like Tate and asked him to play the part. Everything was different. Tate's shoulders were noticeably broader, stretching the expensive fabric of his tailored jacket with effortless confidence. The lean frame Noah had once known had filled out with hard, defined muscle. His chest looked stronger, his arms thicker, his waist narrower. He moved with the quiet assurance of someone who had spent countless hours training his body. If Noah had thought Tate was attractive before he had left the Rambler, that version of Tate paled in comparison to the man standing in front of him now. Somehow impossibly, he had become even more handsome. His black hair was still as dark and naturally wavy as Noah remembered, but it was expertly styled instead of simply left to do whatever it pleased. It framed a face that had grown sharper with age, accentuating his jawline and the striking intensity of his eyes. His clothes were unlike anything Noah had ever seen him wear. Every piece fit with impeccable precision, tailored so perfectly it looked as though it had been sewn exclusively for him. The fabrics carried the understated elegance of foreign luxury houses, the kind of designer labels recognized only by people accustomed to wealth. Nothing shouted for attention, yet every stitch quietly announced that it had cost a fortune. Even his shoes looked handcrafted, polished to a mirror shine. Noah suspected they cost more than the down payment on a car. Tate's hands were immaculate. The rough knuckles, chipped nails, and calluses Noah associated with him were gone, replaced by neatly manicured hands that looked as though they had never known a day's manual labor. Then there was his posture. Gone was the guarded young man who seemed perpetually ready to disappear into the background. This Tate stood with effortless confidence, his shoulders relaxed, his chin level, his movements controlled and deliberate. He carried himself the way powerful executives and billionaires did in the glossy pages of Forbes, not arrogant, not boastful, simply accustomed to being taken seriously the moment they entered a room. He didn't look like someone trying to appear important. He looked like someone who no longer had to try. Noah stared in stunned silence. The Tate he had loved had vanished a year ago without a word. The man standing before him looked as though he had spent that year becoming someone Noah would never have imagined possible. Noah remembered how Tate had changed over the years they had been together. Every year, Tate had grown a little more into himself. His features had sharpened with age, his shoulders had broadened. The awkwardness of youth had gradually disappeared, replaced by a quiet confidence that seemed to fit him more naturally with each passing year. Noah had always joked that Tate became more attractive every birthday, somehow defying the impossible by looking better than he had the year before. But this wasn't the gradual change Noah had watched happen over the course of their relationship. This was something else entirely. A single year had transformed Tate into someone who looked as though he belonged on the cover of a luxury magazine. He was effortlessly striking, the kind of man people noticed the moment he entered a room. There wasn't a single detail that seemed out of place. Noah couldn't stop looking. If he'd never met Tate before today, if this had been their first encounter in some hotel lobby, upscale restaurant, or airport lounge, Noah knew exactly what would have happened. He would have spent the next several minutes trying to work up the nerve to introduce himself. If the conversation had gone well, he probably would have asked Tate to dinner. And if fate had been especially kind, he might have hoped to convince Tate to come home with him. The realization caught Noah completely off guard. He wasn't supposed to be noticing those things. Not after everything that had happened. Not after a year of unanswered questions and deafening silence. Yet his body hadn't received the memo his heart had been trying to write for 12 months. His pulse quickened. His mouth felt dry. The moment he looked back at Tate, the same thought returned with irritating certainty. He's the most attractive man I've ever seen.